Last winter, I was 32. I thought getting away from everything would help. My corporate job had drained me, and after my recent breakup, I needed to escape. I decided to go to the backcountry of Idaho. I set up my tent in the quiet woods, surrounded by the Sawtooth Mountains. The first few days were peaceful. On my second night, I heard howls in the distance. They were strange and eerie. They didn't sound like any wolves I knew. I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. I was alone. After all, days passed, and I became obsessed with finding the source of the howls. I tracked the wolves through the snow. The sounds grew louder, echoing through the trees. I started to find tracks in the snow. They were big and wide, not like any wolf prints. My heart raced as I wondered what was out there. One night, I was outside my tent. I thought I saw something move. It was quick, darting between the trees. I grabbed my camera, hoping to capture it. I snapped a few shots, but all I got were blurry images. I felt uneasy. Was I losing my mind out there? The cold crept into my bones. Each rustle made me jump. I could almost feel eyes on me, watching from the darkness. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Then the howls came again. They were even closer now. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was stalking me. On the last night, I stood outside, peering into the shadows. I felt a presence behind me. I turned quick, but there was nothing there. My breath misted in the air. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my camera again and snapped a photo, hoping to capture whatever was haunting my mind. I left the woods the next day. I drove home with a box of blurry photos. I couldn't be sure if I had seen anything real. As the winter faded, I played with those images. What were those shapes? Were they there with me? Or was it all in my head? One evening, after I got home, I heard the howls again. They echoed in my dreams. I woke up sweating, heart pounding. Was I still followed by something from that wilderness? I felt cold dread wash over me. I kept wondering what I had encountered out there in those mountains. Now, I think about it all the time. What was out there with me? The lines between reality and my imagination blurred in the woods. I experienced more than just nature. I discovered something lingering, waiting just beyond sight. As I sit here now, that feeling doesn't go away. It gnaws at me. I can't shake the feeling I walked away from something that was never meant to be ignored. Weeks passed after I returned home. I tried to settle back into my routine. Work was busy, and I kept my mind occupied. But the howls lingered, scratching at the edges of my thoughts. I couldn't stop shuffling through my photos, hoping for clarity. All I found were shadows and indistinct shapes. One afternoon, I decided to meet up with a friend for coffee. Claire had always been my sounding board. I hoped she could help me make sense of what I'd experienced. As I recounted the howls and the strange tracks, her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. Okay, but what if they weren't just wolves? She asked. What if there is something else out there? Her words made me uneasy. I shrugged them off, but the idea took root. What if it wasn't just my imagination? The thought sat heavy in my chest. Later that evening, I couldn't shake off the feeling. I grabbed my laptop and searched online. I came across stories about strange creatures in Idaho's backcountry, something called the Idaho howler. It was a legend that some claimed to have seen. I felt a mix of disbelief and fear. Legends never felt real until now that I scrolled through blog posts and forums filled with tales of encounters. Large creatures with glowing eyes, howls that sent shivers down spines, warnings to stay away from certain areas. The more I read, the more the tension in my chest grew. It was as if the woods were alive with secrets I had stumbled upon. That night, I couldn't sleep. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the howls echoed in my mind. Suddenly, my phone buzzed beside me, startling me. A new email popped up from a user in one of the forums. The subject line read, Idaho howler, I think I can help. Curiosity piqued. I opened it. The message was short but chilling. I'm afraid you've seen what others haven't. Meet me at the old ranger station at dusk. Bring your photos. I sat up, heart racing. What was I supposed to think? Part of me wanted to dismiss it as a prank, but the other part, the part that felt that deep connection to the woods, urged me to go. I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. As the sun dipped below the horizon the next day, I found myself driving toward the ranger station. The weight of dread settled in my stomach. Shadows lengthened around me, creeping up the trees. I parked my car, grabbed my camera, and stepped outside. The breeze felt colder, sharper. The station loomed ahead, a dilapidated structure shrouded in growing darkness. I hesitated, scanning the area for any sign of my mysterious contact. That S when I heard it, a distant howl, piercing the stillness. My heart dropped. The sound was hauntingly familiar. In that moment, I realized I had to know. I took a breath and stepped forward. What awaited me in the darkness? Was this person even here? Then everything went quiet. Silence swallowed the woods. The howls faded, but my fear amplified. I moved closer to the station, gripping my camera tightly. I wasn't sure what I would find inside, but I couldn't turn back now. I reached for the handle, hesitating for just a second. I took a deep breath and opened the door. And then everything went dark. I stumbled inside the station, the sudden darkness pressing in around me. I fumbled for my phone, using its dim light to scan the room. Everything felt damp and musty. Dust motes danced in the beam, illuminated for an instant before falling back into obscurity. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing off the wooden walls. No answer, just the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I took a few cautious steps forward until I heard something shift behind me. I whirled around, instinctively raising my camera, ready to snap a photo, but there was nothing. Just shadows that I forced myself to breathe steadily and moved deeper into the station. Old maps and weather-worn photos lined the walls. I noticed a large bulletin board covered in handwritten notes and photographs. Many of them were faded, but one caught my eye. It showed a creature large, hulking, with elongated ears and bright eyes. A chill ran down my spine. The resemblance was striking. Was this the Idaho howler? I moved closer, scrutinizing the note pinned beneath it. "Be careful where you tread," it read. "He watches. He knows." The words sent a shiver through me. Suddenly, the hairs on my neck stood on end as I heard it again, a low growl. Distant yet close enough that I felt it reverberate through the floorboards. My heart raced. I turned off my phone, plunging the room back into darkness. I didn't want whatever it was outside to see me. My breathing quickened as I struggled to remember where I could find an exit. I felt trapped, a ball of panic rising in my throat. Then I heard footsteps outside. Heavy and deliberate. They were coming closer. I could feel the vibrations through the wooden wall beside me. I pressed myself against a nearby table, fighting the urge to bolt for the door. I needed to know what was happening first. Suddenly, the door creaked open. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the dim light. I couldn't see their face, but the outline was unmistakable, tall, broad-shouldered, and something about the posture reminded me of a predator on alert. "Are you here?" The voice called out, low and cautious, sending a rush of fear coursing through me. "If you're here because of the howler, you need to leave." I didn't answer, frozen in place. The strangers stepped further into the room, and as they did, my eyes adjusted to the gloom. It was a man, rugged and worn, with an expression I couldn't quite read. There was desperation mixed with a type of sadness that felt familiar. "Show me your photos," he demanded, his voice sharper now. I hesitated, but I knew I couldn't back down. I reached for my bag, feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins. That's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with local legends anymore. And if he was here, he knew more than he was letting on. I grabbed my camera and held it up, but just then, another howl erupted from outside, echoing through the trees. The man's face went pale. "It's south too close," he murmured, his voice trembling. In that moment, everything changed. This was no longer just a legend. I was about to uncover the truth behind the howls, but at what cost? The urgency of the situation ignited a new kind of fear in me. Now I was fully aware that I was not alone, and that whatever was out there was closer than I'd ever imagined. The man's eyes darted toward the door, his hands clenching into fists. "We need to leave. Right now?" His tone was urgent, and I could feel the underlying desperation. Whatever was out there was more than a simple folktale. I nodded, my heart racing. I tucked my camera away, unsure of whether I wanted to capture what would come next or not. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. "What do you mean, leave? Shouldn't we find out what it is?" The man shook his head, his jaw tight. "You don't understand. No one has come back from it. You think it's just a story, but it's not. The howler is real. It's hunting." As if on cue, another howl split the air, closer this time. The sound was haunting, like a multitude of voices intertwined in a chilling melody. Every instinct told me to run, but a part of me held back, curious and terrified. "What if I want to know more?" I challenged, feeling a mix of fear and determination. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Then you're making a mistake. It sees you, feels you. It's drawn to fear. Before I could respond, the growling intensified, rattling the very walls of the station. I could see fear creeping into his eyes, and for a moment, I thought he was going to bolt. But instead, he moved to the window, peering out into the dark. What do we do? I whispered, over the rising tension in the air. He turned to me, pushing a finger to his lips. We wait. It's not here yet. It was then I noticed something on the table by the door, a battered, old hunting rifle. My breath hitched. It looked like it hadn't been used in years. I hesitated, but the fear of whatever the howler was drove me to grab it. The weight in my hands felt alarming, yet strangely comforting. That one tea help you, he said, eyes fixed on the door, listening intently. Why not? Isn't that what you came here for? I shot back, feeling the anger bubbling beneath my fear. It's not that simple. He snapped. Long ago, people tried to hunt it. None of them survived. Then what are we supposed to do? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. He turned back to the window, scanning the perimeter. We hold on until morning, he said quietly, and hope it loses interest. Before I could voice any further protests, I noticed a flicker of movement in the trees outside. My heart dropped. Shadows twisted lazily under the dim glow of moonlight. I could have sworn I saw a pair of glowing eyes locking onto mine. Get down. The man's voice was sharp as he pulled me behind the table. I flattened myself against the old wood, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Then the growls resumed, a mix of frustration and anger. It was closer than ever. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, a sharp knock echoed from the door. Someone else out there. I hissed, panic rising again. Stay quiet, he said, his eyes indeterminate but focused. But in my gut, I knew. The real threat was not only outside but right beside me as well. And when I heard the door begin to creak open, I realized this was only the beginning. The door swung open with a slow creak, revealing the darkness beyond. I held my breath, pressing myself closer to the table's edge. The man beside me gripped the window frame to steady himself, staring into the abyss, his face twisted in fear. Who's there? He called, his voice barely a whisper. Silence stretched. I strained to hear anything, my pulse hammering in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. A chill swept through the room, colder than the wailing winds outside. Turn on the light, he said abruptly. I hesitated, glancing at the rifle in my hands before nodding. Using the dim glow from my phone, I turned it toward the door. Nothing moved. The threshold stayed empty as the light flickered against the creeping shadows. Is anyone there? I tried, though my voice was shaky. Just as I expected, the only response was the chilling howl slicing through the night again. This time, it felt closer. It echoed off the walls like a warning. The man slowly raised his head toward the window again. It knows we're here, he murmured, eyes wide with panic. I shouldn't have stayed. I should have left when I had the chance. Before I could question him further, a second knock came louder, more forceful. The door rattled in its frame. This time, he jumped, his eyes wild as adrenaline coursed through him. What if it's the howler? It could be trying to lure us out. A glimmer of doubt crossed my mind. Then what do we do? If we don't answer, just then, without warning, the door slammed against the wall. The wind howled behind it, rushing in and causing a flurry of papers to dance around the room. My heart raced. All I could see was a specter of darkness standing there, the outline of a figure too vague to identify, shadows blending with the surrounding night. Stay here, the man shouted, moving to the doorway, casting a futile glance back at me. Don't move. With each step he took forward, the shadows seemed to swell, almost spilling into the cabin. When he reached the door frame, he hesitated, his hand trembling at the edge. You don't have to do this, I said, my voice nearly strangled. His eyes darted back to me, frustration and terror colliding. We can't just wait here. It's too risky. And when the figure stepped into the faint light of the cabin. I gasped, heart twisting. The creature was emaciated, its skin stretched tight against bared ribs. It didn't look human, not entirely. The faint glow of its eyes sliced through the dark like searching searchlights. Suddenly, it let out a scream that shattered the air, a mix of howls and cries that reverberated in my bones. The man staggered back, fear etched on his face. I felt my grip on the rifle weaken as I staggered backward. "What have we done?" he shouted, backing away. The creature advanced, inching closer, its intent shimmering through the fear. I knew then what it wanted. But I also knew I couldn't just cover my eyes and hope it would go away. I steadied myself, feeling the rifle as my heart raced. And then everything went dark. In the darkness, silence wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. I couldn't tell if I was still in the cabin or transitioning to another realm. The world felt suspended. A few seconds ticked by, then I heard its soft shuffling sounds, closer than before. "Is it gone?" I whispered, praying it was. There was no response, just the relentless creak of the floorboard beneath my feet. I felt my way back to the window, my fingers trembling as I reached for the curtain. I needed to see what was happening outside. Ignoring the voice in my head urging caution, I pulled the fabric aside. My breath caught. The landscape was transformed. Snow swirled wildly, illuminated by an unnatural light radiating from beyond the trees. The howling wind danced with shadows that writhed and twisted, as if echoing the turmoil inside me. Then I caught sight of the creature. It was different now. No longer lurking just outside. It had moved deeper into the night, its form sprawling like a nightmare given flesh. At the center, it seemed to be absorbing the light around it, almost pulsating with a life of its own. "David!" I shouted, remembering the man who had stood before the door. I turned back to the cabin, but my stomach tightened. The space felt emptied of him, like he'd been swallowed whole. "David!" Panic clawed at my insides as I called for him again. My heart raced, thudding painfully in my chest. I stumbled back, feeling for the rifle, hoping it would offer some semblance of comfort. That instant of disbelief turned into deep dread when I heard a soft whimper. It came from the corner of the cabin. I edged toward the sound, wanting to believe it was David, but dread coursed through me. What if it wasn't he? Holding my phone like a lighthouse beam, I cast the light cautiously over the space. And there he was huddled near the wall, his eyes wide with terror, but afire with determination. "Get away from the window," he rasped, shaking his head violently. Fear was raw on his face, but the urgency in his voice grounded me. "What did you see?" I asked, clutching the rifle tighter. "It's calling to them," he replied breathlessly, glancing toward the darkened woods outside. "We need to go. Now." But before I could respond, the walls shuddered, a burst of freezing wind sliding through the cracks like an unwanted guest. My heart sank. The creature knew we were here. The door slapped violently against the wall once more, revealing nothing but endless dark. I should have run, should have obeyed instinct, but helpless curiosity drew me closer. "That sound, it's different now," I said, my voice small. "It's almost like singing." David's eyes were wide, panic twisting his features. "Singing? No, it's a trap. We can't." A guttural chant echoed from outside, melding with the howls. The air thickened, and I could almost see shimmering shapes darting through the woods, moving in rhythm to the creature's call. That's when I realized we weren't alone. "Someone is out there," I whispered, and the realization hit me like ice water that I turned back to David, urging him to move. "We have to leave now." This time, the urgency felt desperate, the danger screaming for us to act. We stumbled toward the door, urgency racing against whatever whispers waited for us in the abyss. Just as I reached for the door handle, a rustle broke through the howling wind. It was a voice, a familiar, chilling voice. "Come play with us." Then everything went cold. I blinked, trying to shake off the frigid grip of that voice. It echoed in my mind, mingling with the wind's haunting whispers. My instincts screamed for us to flee, but curiosity tugged at me dangerously. David grabbed my arm, his grip tight and urgent. "Don't listen," he hissed. "It's a trick." I nodded, knowing he was right, but the words clung heavily to the air. A surge of icy chaos flowed through the cabin as the creature's chant grew louder, clawing at the edges of my sanity. Another crashing sound made my heart leap. Somewhere outside, branches snapped as if an army of shadows marched through the woods. My breath quickened. "We can't stay here," I said, hoping to sound confident. "We need to find a way out." David scanned the room, his face a mask of focused fear. "The back exit," he muttered, pulling me toward the opposite side of the cabin. "It leads to the woods. We can cut through." "Are you sure?" I stammered. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was outside was pulling us closer, as if it wanted us to join its twisted game. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then said, "There's no other choice. Just follow me." I felt my way through the dark room, hoping the rifle would protect us. The moment we reached the back door, the air turned sharp and dark, a suffocating barrier blocking our path. I pushed against the door, and it creaked open, revealing a blizzard roaring past. Ice-cold flakes slapped against my face as we stepped outside, instantly disoriented by the whiteout. I squinted through the swirling snow. There was nothing but an endless sea of white, the forest looming ominously nearby. "Where now?" I asked, fear pulling at my throat. David pointed to a narrow path, barely visible. "We'll head toward those trees. It's our best shot." Just as we took our first hesitant steps, a blood-curdling howl pierced the storm. The sound cut through the air, close enough to vibrate in my bones. It echoed off the trees like a warning. "Run!" David yelled, and we surged forward, plunging into the woods. My heart raced as I stumbled through the snow, struggling to keep up. My boots sank deep, each step feeling like a nightmare. Suddenly, David stopped, throwing an arm out to halt me. "Did you see that?" My pulse quickened. "See what?" He turned, eyes searching the darkness. Something moved over there. I followed his gaze, dread pooling in my stomach. Shadows shifted between the trees, flickering in and out of sight. The howling thrummed louder, almost in sync with my heartbeat. "David, we need to keep going." A flurry of shapes darted past in the trees, too quick to identify, too alive. I felt a surge of panic. Those weren't just shadows. "Come on, we're almost there," David urged, and we pressed forward, the tall trees closing in around us. In the back of my mind, I wondered what hunted us and whether we could ever escape what this night had awakened. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught another glimmering shape. That voice echoed once more insistent than before. "Join us." The woods felt like they were alive, and I knew, deep down, we were not alone. I turned to yell for David, when suddenly I found myself in a clearing, surrounded by eyes glaring from the dark. In that instant, the howling stopped. Everything fell silent. I realized then, the hunt had just begun. The silence was suffocating. I stood frozen as those eyes, dozens of them, peered back at me, glinting like polished stones in the dark. David's hand was gone from my arm, and panic surged through me. "David?" I called, my voice trembling, but no answer. Just the cold wind, biting into my skin. As the shadows inched closer, that I took a step back, instinctively retreating, but the trees loomed heavy behind me. I was trapped. Then I saw the eyes shift, a ripple of movement among the creatures in the dark. They were circling slowly, their presence a palpable weight in the air. Something primal flickered in their gaze, a hunger, a call to something deep within me. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the tree-line, followed by more howls that sliced through the stillness. Fear snaked its way through me, tightening around my chest. I needed to find David. Before I could move, one of the shadowy shapes darted forward. I barely caught a glimpse, long limbs, formatted with snow. My instincts kicked in, and I ran, pushing through the dense forest. The wind howled like a beast, urging me to flee. "David, where are you?" I shouted again, my breath coming in quick puffs that mingled with the cold air. I stumbled into the next clearing, and my heart sank. No sign of him, just the echo of my own frantic calls. I swiveled around, listening for any hint of movement, any sound of reassurance. It felt like the very woods were leaning in, listening to my fear. Then, in the corner of my eye, I spotted movement. A figure, struggling upright in the thick snow. "David!" I yelled, relief flooding through me as I darted toward him. He looked back, his face pale and wild with terror. "We have to get away. They're coming." "What do you mean, they?" I gasped, grasping his arm. "What did you see? They're not just shadows," he shouted, his voice cracking. They transform. I saw one of them." He glanced over his shoulder, eyes wide. "It's not just wolves out here. It's something else." A chill crept back into my bones as I processed his words. "What do you mean?" I pressed, my heart racing again. I had seen the shapes move in the dark, but now a new fear settled in, an understanding that whatever hunted us was no ordinary predator. Before we could speak further, a shadow lunged from behind a tree, a wretched howl tearing from its throat. David yanked me away just in time, and we bolted deeper into the woods, panic propelling us forward. Every rustle, Every snap of a branch sent jolts of terror through my body. "Keep moving," he urged, his breath ragged as we stumbled through the white maze. "We need to find shelter. Somewhere safe." Suddenly, the ground beneath us shifted. A gnarled root tripped me. I fell, the cold seeping into my skin, and the moment I hit, a flurry of shadows swept past me. One of them glanced back, its eyes still gleaming. I gasped, heart hammering, as I felt a tug, an invisible thread pulling me back toward it. I gasped, fighting against it. Then everything went dark. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, David was gone. I was alone. When I heard it again, the sing-song voice clutching at my mind, echoing through the silence, inviting me deeper into the woods. And this time, I couldn't tell if I wanted to resist or join. I found myself lying in the snow, disoriented. My heart still raced, fueled by fear, but a strange calm washed over me. The sing-song voice, soft and compelling, whispered again like a lullaby that wrapped around me. I shook my head, pushing it away. I had to focus. "David," I called again, my voice echoing in the stillness. But the only response was the hollow rustle of the trees. Pushing myself up, I looked around. The clearing was empty, void of the eyes that had once glared at me from the shadows. Panic bloomed anew as I struggled to regain my bearings. Where was he? What was happening? I rose unsteadily, brushing the snow from my clothes. My breath came out in puffs, visible in the cold air, mingling with a strange metallic scent that curled around me, lingering like a ghost. I turned, scanning the tree-line, hoping to see a flash of David's code or hear a whisper of his voice. Nothing. A chill ran down my spine, but it wasn't he just from the cold. Something else was out there, and in that instant, I wasn't sure if it was stalking me or if it was watching from the shadows. I moved forward, the trees creaking as the wind breathed through them, an unsettling reminder that I was not alone. That I spotted a trail, partly obscured by snow, leading deeper into the woods. Adrenaline surged through my veins once more. I needed to find David. I stepped cautiously, aware of how the woods felt alive around me. The branches hanging like the limbs of waiting creatures. Voices flickered in my mind, strange whispers that seemed to be carried by the wind. I fought against the urge to listen, to surrender to whatever was calling me. I could almost see the shapes again, creeping just at the edge of my vision. I had to keep moving. As I ventured down the path, I suddenly noticed a glint in the snow, a shiny object half buried. I knelt and dug it out, fingers trembling. It was a silver locket, cold to the touch. I opened it, expecting a picture, but found nothing. Just an empty space that seemed to echo with memories long forgotten. Where did this come from? I murmured, my mind racing. It felt wrong, as if it didn't belong in this place. I tucked it in my pocket, press onward, when a sound suddenly broke through my thoughts, an anguished howl. My breath caught. It was closer this time. I ran, heart pounding, racing down the trail as branches whipped against my skin. Then, a flash of movement nearby, dark fur against the white snow. I barely caught the silhouette before it vanished into the trees. I skidded to a stop, rooted to the spot as dread pooled in my stomach. "David," I shouted, desperation spilling from my lips. "Help!" But only silence answered, deep and foreboding, as I realized I was not just fleeing from something. I was being hunted, and then I saw it, a shadow flitting between the trees. Frozen, I squinted into the dark, and that's when I noticed the eyes. A new swarm of them emerged, all gleaming with insatiable hunger, drawing nearer in a silent, predatory dance. I turned to run, but it was too late. The shadows shifted, closing in from every angle. I felt the air grow heavier as the whispers grew louder. And then I heard a familiar voice, distant and desperate. "Don't look back." David's voice, faint but clear, echoed through the trees, piercing the veil of panic. But as I turned to call out to him, a figure stepped into the clearing, blocking my path. It wasn't David, and that's when I knew that I was truly lost. The darkness felt alive, clinging to me as I stumbled back, heart racing. Just when I thought I'd grasped the situation amidst the chaos, reality twisted into something unrecognizable. The figure that stood before me was not familiar, its silhouette malformed, half meshing with the shadows. That was the moment I understood it was still hunting, and I was prey. That I forced myself to breathe through the fear flooding my senses, searching for a way out. The creature's glowing eyes held me captive, and I could make out the sharp angles of its face, not entirely animal nor human, as if the woods had shaped it from nightmares. "Go away," I shouted, my voice sounding small against the all-consuming night that I stepped closer, its growl low and resonating. I was running out of time. I pivoted on my heels and bolted into the woods, snow crunching underfoot, the cold biting at my exposed skin. I could feel its presence behind me, like a weight pressing down, urging me to turn and see what hunted me. Branches whipped against my face as I navigated through the trees, unsure of where I was going. I called out for David over the howling wind, desperately hoping he would answer. The howl that responded cut through me, sending a ripple of dread straight to my bones. It was almost mocking, urging me to give in to fear. Just when I thought I was lost, another howl echoed from a distance, David's voice. I had to reach him. I pushed further into the foliage, instincts overriding reason. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Shadows flicked between the trunks, a specter of shapes dancing with the whisper of leaves. My heart raced. I could almost hear him again this way. Just ahead loomed a flicker of light, a dim glow peeking from behind a cluster of trees. I had to reach it. I charged forward until I realized I was in a small clearing. The faint light pulsed with an ethereal glow, not entirely illuminating the area, but enough to reveal a series of grotesque carvings etched into the bark of nearby trees. They depicted figures that appeared to writhe in pain, faces twisted in agony. A chill ran through me. What kind of place was this? As I stepped closer, the glow brightened momentarily, illuminating a hidden entrance beneath a low-hanging formation of branches. Without thinking, I crawled inside, pressing myself into the cramped space. A soft sound escaped my lips as I tried to catch my breath, the darkness enveloping me like a shroud. Silence closed in piercing, shuddering silence. I strained my ears, willing myself to detect any trace of the creature outside. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still out there, waiting for me to emerge, waiting for me to make a sound. Just as despair seeped into my veins, I heard it crack beneath the weight of heavy footsteps. The earth moved, and my breath caught in my throat. It was not just the howler outside. There were others. They were drawn to the light, creeping closer, their presence palpable. Suddenly, a glimmer caught my eye. The silver locket from earlier, still clenched in my pocket. I opened it, and for a moment, the glow consumed the dim space, illuminating strange, inscrutable faces. They looked lost. It wasn't just a trinket. It felt like a key to the depths of what I'd discovered. My heart raced as I realized each etched face represented a story, perhaps souls lost to the howler and its cursed call. The weight of their cries pressed in on me, and for a moment, I could almost feel them beckoning me to join them. What if I made the wrong choice? I wanted to shut it all out, but I realized what I had to do. With a deep breath, I prepared to crawl back out, when suddenly the entrance lurched as something slammed against it. The world around me vibrated with the creature's roar, shaking the very ground. Drawing a slow, trembling breath, I pushed forward, forcing myself into the night. Emerging into the clearing, I could see their eyes watching, waiting. And then, at the back of my mind, the new structure of understanding settled in. The howler, the lost souls, they weren't separate. They were part of a continuum, tied together as one unbreakable web. With a surge of determination, I called out, "David, I'm here." My voice echoed against the trees, spurring me forward into the gathering darkness. Time felt suspended as I faced the howling storm, tainted whispers brushing against my skin. Whatever haunted these woods, it was all entwined with the fate of the creatures I'd encountered. The feeling of being watched intensified, yet deep down, I knew I wouldn't give in. I had to break the cycle. With resolve clawing my way forward, I pressed on into the shadows, pulse racing, mind reeling. The howls swirled around me like a storm, taunting and testing my very core. I whispered a prayer to the lost, clutched the locket tightly, and braced myself for whatever lay ahead, because in those moments, I knew the answers weren't just in the dark, but merely unfolding right before me. As I stepped deeper into the woods, the light flickered behind me one last time, an echo of hope, or perhaps a warning. The answers remained just beyond reach, waiting in the shadows. Would I truly escape, or had I stepped into something that could never be undone? I had no way of knowing. But there was only one path now, into the unknown.